The scholars silenced the autumn leaves crunched beneath Prisha. Meta's worn sneakers as she hurried across the prestigious campus of Westwood Institute of Technology. Unlike most students who strolled leisurely between classes, Prisha moved with purpose, her thick engineering textbooks clutched against her chest, her mind already solving the differential equations from last night's assignment. "You're going to wear a path into the quad?" teased her roommate Davy, falling into step beside her. "The sustainable materials lecture doesn't start for another 20 minutes. Prisha smiled, adjusting her simple cotton scarf. "Professor Whitman always gives extra credit questions to early arrivals. I need that scholarship renewed." Unlike the other engineering students whose parents funded their education, Prisha's journey from her small village in Gujarat to this elite American university had been paved with academic excellence and determination. Every grade mattered. Every connection counted. Every scholarship dollar was carefully budgeted. "Well, while you're collecting extra credit, I'll be collecting. Phone number's at the Tau Beta Mixer tonight." Davy grinned. "You should come. Rumor has it Rohan Tandon will be there." Prisha tried to appear unaffected by the name, but her cheeks betrayed her with a slight flush. Everyone knew Rohan Tandon, son of Vikram Tandon, founder of Tandon Technologies. Brilliant, charismatic, and insufferably aware of both qualities. "I have to finish the design competition entry," Prisha replied. "Besides, those parties are just ... double quotes fun," Davy supplied. "Something you desperately need more of?" The enormous glass and steel engineering building loomed ahead, a temple to innovation that Prisha hoped to someday leave her mark on. Maybe next time. But that evening, after Davy's persistent pleading and promises of leaving early, Prisha found herself perched uncomfortably on the edge of a leather couch in the Tau Beta Engineering Fraternity House. The room pulsed with music and ambition, future tech leaders networking with calculated enthusiasm. "He's here," Davy whispered, nodding toward the entrance where Rohan Tandon had appeared. Rohan moved through the crowd with effortless confidence, his designer clothes and easy smile marking him as someone who had never questioned his place in these hallowed halls. Prisha observed him quietly, noting how his charisma seemed genuine when discussing renewable energy with a professor. Then shifted to practice charm when flattering the dean's daughter. Later, while refilling her water cup in the kitchen, Prisha overheard voices around the corner. "Who's the girl in the traditional outfit? The one who answered all Whitman's questions today?" a male voice asked. Prisha froze, recognizing Rohan's distinctive tone. "Prisha something. Scholarship student, engineering genius, apparently another," voice answered. "She's pretty in an innocent way," Rohan commented. "I tried talking to her in computational design last semester. All work, no play. Your type of challenge?" Someone joked. Rohan's laugh carried a dismissive edge that cut through Prisha like ice. "Hardly. These traditional village girls are too rigid, those old-fashioned values. She probably believes in arranged marriages and never having fun. She'd be completely out of place in the real tech world." The cup crumpled in Prisha's hand, water spilling onto her simple kurta. She backed away silently, face burning with humiliation. "Hey, you okay?" Davy appeared, concern etching her features as she took in Prisha's expression. "I'm fine," Prisha whispered, straightening her shoulders. "I just remembered I need to finish the structural analysis for tomorrow." As they left, Prisha caught Rohan's eye across the room. He smiled casually, raising his glass in her direction, completely unaware of what she had overheard. She didn't smile back. That night, while her roommate slept, Prisha made two promises to herself. First, she would never allow Rohan Tandon or anyone else to make her feel inferior because of her background. Second, she would prove him wrong about her place in the real tech world. She pulled out her design competition entry as sustainable, a housing concept that incorporated traditional Indian architectural principles with cutting-edge materials science. With renewed determination, Prisha worked until dawn. No longer designing for a grade or scholarship, but for something far more personal, a future where people like Rohan Tandon would have no choice but to take her seriously. Foundations built. The graduation ceremony at Westwood Institute of Technology shimmered with promise under the June sun. Prisha sat among her peers, the gold honor cords draped around her neck, catching the light as she moved. For years of relentless work had culminated in this moment, graduating summa cum laude with a dual degree in architectural engineering and sustainable design. And the Westwood Medal for Innovation goes to Prisha Mehta for her groundbreaking thesis on biomimetic architecture in resource-limited environments, announced Dean Richardson. Applause rippled through the crowd as Prisha crossed the stage. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Rohan in the sea of black caps, his expression unreadable. Their paths had rarely crossed since that party years ago, though she'd heard plenty about his exploits, both academic and social. Despite his reputation for partying, Rohan was undeniably brilliant. Having developed a modular construction software that had already been acquired by his father's company as she accepted her medal, Prisha couldn't help but think of her village. In Gujarat, where her parents were watching via live stream in the community center, surrounded by neighbors who had pooled resources to send her abroad. This victory belonged to them as much as to her. "Congratulations," came a familiar voice as graduates mingled after the ceremony. Rohan stood before her, confident as ever in his tailored suit. "Your thesis was impressive. Father's foundation is launching sustainable housing initiatives in Southeast Asia. We should talk sometime." The job offer hung in the air, prestigious, comfortable, and exactly what Prisha had promised herself she wouldn't accept. "Thank you," she replied coolly, "but I've accepted a position with Ashray Innovations in Mumbai. We're developing earthquake-resistant, low-cost housing technologies." Something flickered across Rohan's face. Surprise, perhaps disappointment. Sounds ... noble. But the salary can't compare to what Tandon Tech offers. Prisha smiled. "Some things are worth more than money, Rohan. Perhaps someday you'll understand that." Before he could respond, she turned away, photograph in hand, not of herself, but of the first prototype her designs would help build in Mumbai. For her, success wasn't measured in stock options or corner offices, but in homes that would withstand monsoons, in schools that would nurture dreams like hers. 7 years passed in a blur of blueprints, construction sites, and international conferences. While most of her classmates climbed corporate ladders, Prisha built her own. Ashray Innovations had grown from a small Mumbai startup to a global leader in sustainable architecture under her technical direction. When the founder retired, Prisha leveraged everything she owned to buy controlling interest, renaming it Prithvi, Sustainable Systems Earth. In Sanskrit, with offices spanning 3 continents, her latest triumph came in the form of a revolutionary building material derived from agricultural waste, which had caught the attention of the World Economic Forum as she delivered her keynote address in Davos. Prisha embodied a confidence that came not from arrogance, but achievement. The future of construction isn't just about building upward, but about giving back to the earth we build upon. She concluded to thunderous applause. Later, at the reception, Prisha overheard a conversation that transported her back to that fraternity. "Kitchen years ago, Tandon Technologies is on shaky ground," a venture capitalist murmured to his colleague. "Vikram's health is failing. Rohan's leadership has been ... questionable. Too many vanity projects. Not enough innovation." "I heard they're seeking investors to stay afloat," his companion replied. "The modular construction division is still valuable, but they've fallen behind on sustainability metrics that clients demand now." Prisha sipped her champagne thoughtfully. Tandon Technologies had been a titan in the industry, the kind of company that could have offered her security and status after graduation. Now, it seemed roles had reversed. Later that week, turning to her London office, Prisha called an emergency board meeting. "Tandon Technologies is seeking investment," she announced to her executive team. "Their modular construction software would integrate perfectly with our sustainable materials database. I propose we explore acquisition." Her CFO looked concerned. "It's a significant risk, Prisha. The reputation has suffered, and there are rumors about mismanagement." "Which is precisely why their valuation has dropped to an attractive level," Prisha countered. "Their core technology remains sound. With proper leadership, we could transform their weakness into our strength."
Ow.
The decision wasn't purely business. Somewhere beneath her pragmatism lay the memory of a dismissive laugh. of being judged too traditional, too rigid for the real tech world. But Prisha had long since learned to channel such memories into fuel rather than fire. That evening, alone in her office, overlooking the Thames, Prisha drafted the acquisition proposal herself. The document was methodical, strategic, and forward-thinking, everything she had become. As she worked, rain tapped against the windows like distant applause. Nature's acknowledgement of how far she had come from that village girl clutching textbooks to her chest. Her assistant interrupted with a gentle knock. The video call with Mumbai is ready, and Ms. Mehta. The preliminary background check on Tandon Technologies came through. Rohan Tandon is now acting CEO following his father's stroke last month. Prisha paused, fingers hovering above her keyboard. She hadn't known about Vikram's condition, and the news that Rohan now helmed the company added a personal dimension to what should have been strictly business. "Thank you, Jasmine," she replied evenly. "Please send my well wishes for Mr. Tandon's recovery when you submit our proposal." After her assistant left, Prisha gazed at the glittering London skyline, wondering if Rohan still believed she didn't belong in the real tech world and how he would react when he discovered that world. Now included answering to her. The blueprints returned the Tandon Technologies headquarters in Bangalore still projected an image of sleek confidence. All glass and chrome rising 28 stories above the tech corridor. But Rohan Tandon knew appearances could be deceiving. Inside his father's, now his office, on the top floor, the reality was starkly different. "We have 3 months of operational runway left," explained Aditya Sharma, the company's weathered CFO. "The semiconductor division is hemorrhaging money. The construction software needs a complete overhaul to compete with newer platforms." Rohan rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on him. Vikram Tandon had built this empire from nothing, transforming a small electronics shop into a technology conglomerate. Now, with his father confined to a hospital bed after a devastating stroke, the responsibility of saving it rested squarely on Rohan's shoulders. "What about the investors I met in Singapore?" Rohan asked, loosening his tie. Oditya's expression said everything. "They're concerned about leadership transition. Your father was the visionary everyone trusted. The unspoken critique hung in the air, and you're the playboy who squandered opportunities." While Rohan had indeed contributed valuable innovations to the company, his reputation for impulsive decisions and lavish spending had preceded him. The years of dismissing sustainable practices as trendy but impractical had come back to haunt them. As the market shifted decisively in that direction, "There is one potential lifeline," Aditya continued cautiously. "We've received an acquisition offer from Prithvi Sustainable Systems. They're primarily interested in our modular construction division." Rohan frowned. "Prithvi, the green building company?" "Yes, they've grown exponentially in recent years. Their CEO is presenting the proposal personally next week." Something about the name nagged at Rohan's memory, but crisis management left little room for reflection. "Set up the meeting. In the meantime, I want to see every financial record from the last 5 years. There must be something we're missing." The days blurred together as Rohan worked around the clock, discovering that his father's illness had masked deeper problems within the company for years. Vikram had been quietly covering losses with his personal fortune, unwilling to admit that his son's pet projects were draining resources while the market evolved without them. By the time the meeting with Prithvi arrived, Rohan had swallowed enough humble pie to know their options were limited, accept an acquisition or face bankruptcy within months. He stood at the boardroom window, watching a helicopter touch down on the landing pad. 2 figures emerged, a tall man in a gray suit, and a woman in a deep blue pantsuit, her long black hair lifting momentarily in the rotor wash before settling back against her shoulders. "Our guests have arrived," announced his assistant. Rohan straightened his tie, preparing his well-practiced smile for potential corporate saviors. The boardroom door opened, and Rohan extended his hand to greet the visitors. Then he saw her face, and time collapsed. "Hello, Rohan," said Prisha Mehta, her voice calm and professional as if they were continuing a conversation from yesterday rather than resuming one abandoned nearly a decade ago. "Thank you for meeting with us." This is Omar Rashid, my chief strategy officer. Rohan struggled to reconcile the confident executive before him with the quiet scholarship student he remembered. Gone was the hesitant posture and simple attire. This Prisha commanded attention without demanding it, her traditional gold earrings complementing her modern business attire. Seamless blend of the heritage he had once mocked and the future he had failed to embrace. Prisha, he managed, recovering his composure. This is unexpected. A slight smile curved her lips. Life often is. Shall we begin? The presentation was comprehensive and ruthlessly precise. Prithvi would acquire Tandon Technologies' modular construction division, retaining most staff, but implementing significant strategic changes. The semiconductor division would be sold off to another buyer Prithvi had already lined up. The Tandon family would maintain a minority stake in Rohan, would be offered a senior position overseeing integration of the technologies. In essence, Prisha concluded, we're offering a path forward that preserves jobs, maintains the Tandon legacy, and allows the best innovations to thrive under new direction. The board members nodded appreciatively. The deal was fair generous, even given their precarious position. But Rohan felt the ground shifting beneath him. The company his father had built would no longer be his to lead. And the woman his younger self had dismissed as too traditional for the real tech world would be his boss. We'll need time to review the details, Rohan said stiffly. Prisha gathered her materials with deliberate calm. Of course, but time is a luxury Tandon Technologies can ill afford at present. We've prepared for a swift transition should you accept. The meeting concluded and executives filed out. Prisha lingered behind. I visited your father in the hospital yesterday, she said quietly. He recognized me from when I interviewed for an internship years ago. Rohan looked up sharply. You saw my father? Why? Respect, she replied simply. He built something remarkable. My parents taught me to honor those who create paths for others, even when their children might have blocked the way. The barb was subtle but unmistakable. Before Rohan could respond, Prisha placed a business card on the table. I'm staying at the Oberoi. When you're ready to discuss next steps not as Tandon and Prithvi, but as Rohan and Prisha call me. Some conversations are better had away from boardrooms. With that, she walked out, leaving Rohan to contemplate. How the quiet village girl he had underestimated now held his family's legacy in her hands. Structural integrity, the Oberoi Hotel's rooftop restaurant offered a panoramic view of Bangalore. City lights twinkling like earthbound stars beneath a purple dusk. Prisha arrived precisely on time, choosing a corner table that afforded both privacy and perspective. Much like her business philosophy, Rohan appeared 7 minutes late. His usual confidence tempered by circumstances, he had traded his formal suit for dark jeans and a tailored blazer, a small act of defiance against the power dynamics now at play between them. Thank you for agreeing to meet, he said, settling into the chair across from her. Prisha observed him with the careful attention she gave to architectural blueprints, noting the new lines around his eyes and the slight slump in shoulders that once carried only entitlement. The years had matured him, though whether they had improved him remained to be seen. Your board voted unanimously to accept our offer, she began, dispensing with pleasantries. I imagine that was difficult for you. Rohan's laugh held no humor. Not as difficult as explaining to my father that his company will no longer bear only our name, though the doctors say he may never fully comprehend what's happened. I'm sorry. About your father's condition? Prisha said genuinely. Vikram Tandon was a pioneer. Our acquisition doesn't change that legacy, doesn't it? Rohan challenged, leaning forward. You of all people, making this move, it feels personal, Prisha. The waiter arrived with mineral water and menus, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. After they ordered, Prisha considered her response carefully. Business is rarely personal, she finally said, but people are. Date. I won't pretend our history is irrelevant, Rohan. You judged me once based on assumptions about my background and values. Now, you'll be judged on your merits within my company. The symmetry isn't lost on me. Rohan had the grace to look discomfited. I was young and arrogant, and now, just arrogant, he admitted, with a flicker of his old charm, but also desperate. to preserve what my father built. Whatever you think of me, Prisha, I do care about the company, about our employees, and the technologies we've developed. Their food arrived, Prisha's simple vegetarian thali and Rohan's more elaborate seafood dish, and other contrasts that seemed to underscore their differences. That's why you're being offered the integration director position, Prisha explained. Your technical knowledge is valuable, and continuity will reassure key clients. But make no mistake, the company culture will change. Sustainability isn't a marketing buzzword at Prithvi. It's our foundation. The foundation my company failed to build, Rohan acknowledged. While we chased quarterly profits, you were playing the long game. Prisha allowed herself a small smile. Not playing, Rohan, building, there's a difference. The conversation shifted to technical details of the merger, and Prisha found herself impressed by Rohan's grasp of the challenges ahead. Beneath the privileged exterior he'd always maintained lurked a genuine innovator with insights that complemented her own approach. As dinner concluded, Rohan asked the question that had clearly been troubling him. Why did you really come yourself? Could have sent your acquisition team. Prisha placed her napkin beside her plate, choosing honesty over diplomacy. Because some foundations need to be inspected personally. I needed to see if you were part of what's worth salvaging. In your verdict, still being determined, she replied. You start Monday. The executive floor of your building is being renovated to Prithvi's carbon-neutral standards. Your office will temporarily relocate beside mine. A month into the acquisition, the predicted tensions emerged. Tandon's leadership team, accustomed to Rohan's more impulsive management style, chafed under Prithvi's methodical processes. Rohan himself oscillated between brilliant collaboration and frustrated resistance, particularly when Prisha vetoed his suggestion to accelerate integration. At the expense of sustainability certifications, these certifications add 3 months to our timeline, he argued during a particularly heated meeting. And decades to our market relevance, Prisha countered. This isn't negotiable, Rohan. That evening, she found him still in his office, surrounded by building code regulations and environmental impact assessment subjects he had previously delegated to others. You're still here, she observed from his doorway. Rohan looked up, fatigue evident in his expression, trying to understand the certification requirements. If we're committed to this path, I should at least comprehend the fundamentals. Something shifted in Prisha's perception of him, willingness to learn, to adapt that the arrogant student she remembered had never demonstrated. Come with me, she said impulsively. There's something you should see. They drove to the outskirts of Bangalore, where Prithvi was constructing a community of affordable housing using their pioneering sustainable technologies. In the fading light, workers were finishing their day, the partially completed structures silhouetted against the sunset. My first major project after graduation was similar to this, Prisha explained as they walked the site. A village not unlike where I grew up. The homes had to withstand monsoons, conserve scarce resources, and cost almost nothing. Rohan ran his hand along a wall made from compressed agricultural waste and local clay. This material, it's similar to what you presented in Davos? Prisha nodded. An early version. Feel the thermal properties. No air conditioning needed, even in summer. As they explored the site, Prisha explained the integrated water recycling systems and solar capabilities. For once, Rohan listened without interrupting, asking questions that revealed genuine curiosity rather than competitive analysis. This is why the certifications matter, Prisha concluded. Not for marketing materials, but because standards protect people who can't afford failures. In the quiet of the construction site, with the smell of earth and possibilities surrounding them, Rohan finally asked the question that had lingered since the acquisition began. That night at the party, you heard what I said about you, didn't you? About traditional values having no place in the tech world? Prisha met his gaze steadily. I did. I was wrong, he said simply. Spectacularly, embarrassingly wrong. The admission hung between them as the first stars appeared overhead. Not quite an apology, but perhaps the foundation for one. Renovations of the heart 1 year into the merger, Prithvi Tandon Technologies had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The integration of Tandon's modular construction software with Prithvi's sustainable materials database had created an ecosystem that revolutionized how buildings were designed, approved, and constructed. Their joint platform reduced planning time by 40% while improving environmental compliance, a combination that quickly became industry standard. What surprised everyone, however, was the effectiveness of Rohan and Prisha's professional partnership. Never would have believed it, Omar confided to Prisha after a particularly successful investor presentation. But Tandon actually listened to the community feedback and redesigned the entire user interface based on their needs rather than our technical preferences. Prisha smiled, watching through the conference room glass as Rohan explained a complex algorithm to junior engineers, his enthusiasm evident in animated gestures. People can surprise you if given the right structure to build upon. The transformation hadn't been instantaneous. For the first 3 months, Rohan had struggled with his diminished authority, occasionally reverting to the impulsive decision-making that had contributed to Tandon's decline. But where others might have removed him, Prisha had instead channeled his energy, pairing his innovation with her disciplined approach. "You're not threatened by his ideas," Davy observed during one of their rare dinner catch-ups. Prisha's old roommate now ran a successful biotech venture. Most CEOs would have sidelined him by now. "Good ideas shouldn't be threatening," Prisha replied. "And Rohan has excellent ideas when he's not trying to prove himself the smartest person in the room." What she didn't share with Davy was how their professional relationship had gradually evolved into something more complex. Late nights troubleshooting software integrations had led to conversations that wandered beyond business's childhood growing up in his father's technological shadow. Her experiences navigating between traditional family expectations and modern ambitions one evening. After the successful completion of their first major international project, disaster-resistant school complex in the Philippines, the executive team gathered at Prisha's home to celebrate. As the night progressed and guests departed, Prisha found herself alone with Rohan on her terrace garden. "I visited my father today," he said, gazing at the jasmine plants climbing her garden trellis. "The doctors say there's been improvement." He squeezed my hand when I mentioned the Philippines project. "It's wonderful," Prisha said warmly. "You'd be proud of what you've accomplished this year." Rohan turned to her, moonlight silvering his features. Would he? Or would he see what I've finally acknowledged, that I needed someone like you to show me what was possible when ego takes a back seat to purpose? The admission hung between them, honest in a way their interactions at Westwood never had been. Perhaps both can be true, Prisha suggested. Pride and accomplishment and recognition of growth aren't mutually exclusive, like tradition and innovation. Rohan asked with a slight smile, referencing their ongoing friendly debate about incorporating vernacular architectural elements into cutting-edge designs. Precisely. Prisha found herself moving closer, the professional boundaries they'd maintained beginning to blur. The strongest structures have always balanced the wisdom of the past with the possibilities of the future. Rohan's hand found hers in the darkness. "I've been afraid to say this, but I need to. I admire you, Prisha. Not just your business acumen or technical brilliance, but your integrity. The values I once dismissed as limitations are the very qualities that made you succeed where I failed." "I didn't succeed because you failed," Prisha corrected gently. "That implies our paths were mutually exclusive. Perhaps we were always meant to converge us, not as the people we were at Westwood." The realization that had been building for months crystallized between them. The attraction wasn't despite their differences, but because of how those differences had shaped them, challenged them, completed them. "There's a sustainable housing symposium in Copenhagen next month," Prisha said, her voice soft but certain. "We need to present our findings on the Philippines project. I was thinking we might extend the trip. There's an experimental forest architecture installation I've wanted to visit in Norway." "Are you asking me on a personal trip, Ms. Mehta?" Rohan's tone was teasing, but his eyes held a question. "I'm suggesting that some explorations are better undertaken together," she replied. "Professionally, and perhaps otherwise. There first. Kiss tasted of possibility, not the end of a story, but the thoughtful beginning of one neither had imagined during those college days. There would be challenges ahead, navigating a relationship within their corporate structure, balancing their still distinct approaches to problems, explaining to the board and their families how adversaries had become allies, and then something more. But if their journey had taught them anything, it was that the most enduring structures were those built with care. Designed with integrity and reinforced with the understanding that true strength often comes from the very elements once perceived as weaknesses. 3 years later, at the groundbreaking of the Vikram Tandon Memorial Innovation Campus, a state-of-the-art zero-carbon facility that would train the next generation of sustainable architects and engineers, Rohan and Prisha stood side by side. Their wedding, bands catching the sunlight as they ceremonially turned the first soil. From humble materials, remarkable futures rise, Prisha said into the microphone, quoting her grandmother's wisdom that had guided her from a small village to global impact. Beside her, Rohan squeezed her hand, no longer afraid to speak his heart, no longer needing to prove his worth through arrogance. The man who had once mocked her traditional values now treasured them. Woven as they were into the fabric of the woman who would not only become his boss, but his partner in all things. As they looked out at the gathered crowd, colleagues, students, family members, they saw not just witnesses to their professional success, but to the more personal renovation that had transformed them both. The understanding that true character, like the most sustainable structures, reveals its strength not in favorable conditions, but in how it weathers challenges, adapts to change, and ultimately creates space for others to build their own dreams upon its foundation.